Hello and welcome everyone. I am Prateek and I'll be your host for this session on the topic Selenide Appium, a mutated Java Appium client. In this session, we will walk you through Selenide Appium, a game-changing open source library built on top of Appium Java client. We will discover how Selenide Appium can significantly reduce your script development time, giving you more room to focus on what truly matters. Before we begin, let's quickly take care of few housekeeping items. This session is being recorded, so in case you need to drop off midway, you would be able to rewatch the entire session from the TestMu event by going to the schedule. We'll be having a dedicated Q&A round at the end, so feel free to address any question during the session in the Q&A window on the right side of the screen. You can also react to the session at any time through the emojis on the bottom of the screen. So let's welcome our speaker on stage, Amuthan Sakthivel. Amuthan is a passionate advocate for testing, Java open source, and education. He is not only a contributor to projects like Selenide and Selenide-Appium, but also a knowledge sharer through his YouTube channel and technical blogs. Over to you, Amuthan.
Hey Pratik, hi everyone. Thanks for joining. I'm pretty excited to speak about Selenide-Appium. So I've been contributing to Selenide-Appium for a very long time. So I'm really glad that I got a chance to speak about it in TestMu conference. Right? I hope you all will find this useful. Right? Let me quickly share my screen. Hopefully you all can see my slides and hear me well. So yeah, so again we're gonna speak about Selenide-Appium. How it's gonna help us to write concise, fluent Appium tests in Java, right? And a little more about me. My name is Amuthan. Again, I work as a staff desktops engineer at Clipboard Health. I do contribute to open source. I'm a tech YouTuber, and I also play cricket. During my leisure time. So why Selenide-Appium, right? So that's a very important question. When we have Appium, why want to use a wrapper something like Selenide-Appium? Obviously, the important motto for us is it's free and open source and built on top of Appium, right? Um, we have created code in such a way that it is having concise and fluent APIs, right? So the code is much readable than your Appium code. Again, we handle a lot of problems that Appium has, right? So it is also very stable. For example, in Appium, you have to write a lot of boilerplates, and you need to handle a lot of Ajax calls. There can be timeout issues that can happen. You need to handle all the screenshots and stuff like that, and you also need to handle state element reference exception. But all these things you don't have to worry about in Selenide-Appium, right? And the ultimate goal is let you to only focus on the business logic. So you don't spend any time diving into the intricacies of Appium code, how touch action classes work, all these intricate API details. Just focus on the business logic and write your test, right? Appium is a fantastic tool for driving the mobile apps, but it's for low level interactions. For example, how to interact with a web element, how to interact with a text box, and stuff like that. But Selenide-Appium is a testing library. It's high level. It has inbuilt assertions. It has inbuilt waiting conditions that you can use. So all these things will be taken care by Selenide-Appium, right? Again, at the end of the slides, I'm gonna give you a demo and create a test live, right? So I'm gonna pick a use case and then automate it and show you guys how easy it is to automate a test case using Selenide-Appium. And this is how a test might look like, right? So we basically tell the implementation classes where how to launch our Appium session, and then we're going to interact with the elements like this. So the test is going to be much cleaner and concise, and we're going to see much more detail in the later slides. So this is the current code for weights, right? So Appium, if you want to wait for an element to be displayed, so this is the kind of code that we have to write, right? So if you notice, new WebDriver wait, uh, what about the driver that you have, you need to mention what is the timeout that you want to apply for, and then you have to wait for different conditions, right? So basically there is a lot of boilerplates, and which actually doesn't make any sense. These are low level details. As a end user, you always end up creating a wrapper class to hide this implementation. um, but when you do that, most often it won't be readable, because we want to be creating a lot of static methods and stuff like that. But with Selenide Appium, it's going to be much easier. Again, for example, have a look at this one. Instead of visibility of the element, if you want to wait for a text to be present in the element, it's going to be little different. So you again have to create a wrapper to basically encapsulate all this information, right? So this is a lot of noise, and that's when a Selenide Appium comes handy, right? If you notice here, dollar indicates find element. So I want to find an element using this particular X path, and I want to wait for it to be visible. So the should be indicates there is a condition that I want to apply, and what kind of condition it is. I want to wait for the element to become visible. The second use case is much simpler. Let's say I want to find the element and wait for it to have the text as animation. So the same code that we have written here with a lot of 3 to 4 lines of code with a lot of noise becomes much simpler. With you can also have should have also something that you can use. Should be also you can something, it's just a different name. So you can try out different names here. Again, if you want to override the timeouts, for example, by default it waits for 4 seconds, and then you can also customize the number of seconds that you can wait by overloading the should be method, right? You can also wait for an element to become disappear, right? So all these things, it's not just about waits. Even if there is some exceptions happening, like the stale element reference exception, which is obviously very tricky to handle, so we handle it by ourselves. So you don't have to really worry about all these stuff. Just make use of these should be and should have and should methods, right? You can apply the same smart weighting strategies for finding elements. For example, the double dollar indicates find elements, the corresponding Appium equivalent. So you want to find the elements using this particular X path, and you want to wait for the size to become 4, right? So you can also write size to be greater than or equal to 4. You can also wait for the collections to have text matching these particular list, right? So that's how simple it is to write code with smart weights with Selenide API. Again, working with deep links, as I mentioned earlier, Appium is good for low level interactions. So people need to really understand a lot of things, that how things works under the hood. For example, if you want to launch a deep link on Android and iOS, and you also want your test case to be running on real devices and the simulators, then there is a lot of things that you need to understand. So for Android, the code to launch the deep links is different, and for iOS, you need to launch the Safari. You need to find the URL bar. Again, the URL bar for different simulators might have different predicate strings. So you need to understand that. So a test case that passes in one simulator might not pass in the other one or in the real device. So then you have to enter the deep link. Then you need to enter the press enter key, and then if auto accept unless is false, then there will be an open button in the simulator. So there is a lot of intricacies involved here. And then if you are working for a project, you don't have time for all these things. Again, that's when Selenide APM comes in handy. So you just need to call open Android deep link, and then pass the two different parameters, the deep link and the app package. Then we take care of it by ourselves. The same for the iOS. You don't need to pass the app package. You just need to pass the deep link. We can launch these deep links for you. So you don't have to worry about whether you are running the test on real device or the simulator, or Android or iOS. We handle everything for you. Same as the case for selectors. For example, exports are we get used to complexities. For example, if most of the people will tell this export doesn't have any problems at all, but if you notice, a lot of information here are boilerplates. For example, this at the rate, the opening brackets and closing brackets, and then the comma. This the syntax is pretty much of a noise. All we want to do is find an element with the content description of views. That's it, right? So, and that's when in Selenide-Appium you can simply write find element by attribute, and the attribute name is content description and the value of views, and then I want to click it, right? So you can do all these things with the help of Appium select as class in Selenide Appiums. For example, if you want to use contains text graphy, it can be much simpler here. By attribute looks for exact text, while the with attribute looks for the contains text. So if you notice, all these noise around here, opening brackets, closing brackets, and all that becomes very simple with the attribute. So so yeah, so these additional selectors will come really handy. And apart from that, if you want to hide keyboard in your code, we normally write a lot of these things. For example, imagine there is a login screen where you want to enter the username, and then you need to hide the keyboard before clicking on the login button. Otherwise, the keyboard might hide your login button. So what you want to do is you want to check for whether the driver is an instance of Android driver. Then you need to hide the keyboard by calling the hide keyboard method. But in case of iOS, you need to find the element again and then send the return new line string. So this basically works in iOS. There is no hide keyboard method for iOS, so you have to do some kind of tweaking like this. Um, Again, with Selenide Appium, this is going to be much simpler, right? So find the element username, set the value, whatever the username you want to enter, and then hide the keyboard. So it doesn't care about Android or iOS. All these things are handled within this hide keyboard method, right? And then you can simply click on the login button. That's how simple that you could write the code with Selenide Appium. Again, there are a lot of native events in Appium that are very hard to do. For example, if you want to perform a native event of tab or double tap, it's going to be pretty complex, right? You need to write a lot of code. Basically, you need to use sequence class. Prior to version 8, you have to use touch action classes, right? So, but after the V8 Java client, you have to write a lot of code using sequence class, and that is pretty hard, right? As a end user, I don't want to involve in all those noise. So what I can do is I can simply call click method and use Appium click options, and then call the tap method inside it. If you want to do a double tap, you can also do like this, right? If you want to tap based on a coordinates, it is as simple as that, like this, right? If you want, you can also do long press, you can do drag and drop. We have methods and for all these stuff. So again, there is one of the important use case that we pretty often face in Appium. Like if you want to get a text from an element, what we normally do is, let's say this app is available on both Android and iOS. In Android you have to get the text attribute. In iOS you need to get the label attribute. So what you have to again do, you need to again do the instance of check to fetch the correct values, right? So if it is Android, you want to fetch the text attribute. If it is iOS, you want to fetch the label attribute, right? And then you have to write assertion like this. But with Selenide Appium, we have a combined attribute class where you can define. So for Android, you have to use the text attribute. For iOS, you have to use the iOS attribute, name attribute, and then you can simply do find element should have the attribute, whatever the attribute that you want, and then the value that you are expecting on this. So internally, it will identify what is the driver under test, what is the instance of it, and then based on that, it will fetch the text or name attribute, and it will assert it. So your code becomes much easier and simpler, and then you can also do a static import of this Appium condition, so the code becomes even more readable, right? Again, there is a bigger problem with page factory. Page factory, you cannot have dynamic locators, right? So if you want to pass index dynamically, you cannot use page factory. So people often go back to the bilocating strategies. If you have an app that has both Android and iOS, you have to create two bilocators, and then you need to find whether the driver is again an instance of Android driver, and based on that, you need to again operate it. In my opinion, if conditions are is one of the most complex code that you can write. So avoid if conditions all the time. So this is pretty nice, right? So again, you can simply use combined by class, where you can define what is the Android attribute and the iOS attribute that you want to use to find the element. Here we have only one combined by instance, and then you can simply say $username set value Selenide rocks, right? So you don't have to write the if conditions or have additional by locators, right? So again, scrolling or swiping is pretty hard with APM, right? So it's not as easy as we see in Selenium. So touch action that was used before 8.x is deprecated now. So you need to use sequence class. Again, it is not so straightforward to scroll to an element. It is very difficult, believe me. So for Android, you have to use isDisplayed method to check for whether the element is displayed. So if the element is not displayed, it basically throws an exception, so you need to handle the exception. Again, in iOS, you need to use visible attribute instead of checking for the is displayed, because in iOS, the is displayed will always return true, even if the element is not in the viewport. So that's pretty tricky to handle. So imagine someone like you who have to write the business logic and the test case, focusing on all these important things, and then making sure that the wrapper that you create works on all the devices and Android and iOS emulators and simulators. It's pretty hard, right? So we don't have to worry about all these things. With Selenide Appium, you can just write, find the element using the XPath or whatever the strategy that you want, and then scroll to .click. That's it. By default, it scrolls down and then searches for the element. It scrolls 30 times, and then try to find the element. Uh, Again, you can also scroll up. For that, you can use scroll up and then click. You can also limit the number of swipes that you want to perform before throwing an exception. Here it will scroll a maximum of 10 times in the upward direction before throwing an exception. You can also use swipe to swipe to the right or the left based on the needs. So scroll is for vertical scrolling and the swipe is for horizontal swiping, right? Again, with Selenide Appium, you can also create custom conditions, custom commands, right? Let's say you are as crazy as me and you create a lot of crazy commands. For example, you want to create triple click, right? Don't ask me who wants to create triple click, but it's just an example. Like, let's say if you want to create your own custom command that is not available in Selenide, but you want to still adapt Selenide for that, you can do something like this and implement the commands interface, right? Once you do that, you can write all the logic here, and then in the test code you can simply call find the element, wait for it to become visible, and call the execute method and pass the instance of the implementation here, right? So once you can do this, you can also expand it even more. Like, you can create your own custom elements, custom strategies, custom conditions, and all that. If time permits, I will cover them in the demo, right? So so before going to the demo, Pratik, if there are any urgent questions I can take before going to the demo.
So no, Mutton, we are good for the demo.
Oh, okay. So So, uh, so I have created a very simple Maven project, and I have added a couple of dependencies here. So, for example, the Selenide APM dependencies coming from the group com.codebond, and the JUnit Jupyter dependency for writing tests, right? So, the testing framework that I'm going to use here is JUnit, but you can also use TestNG. Yeah. So it's a very simple framework, and so the use case that I'm going to take here is basically from the API demos app. This is the demos app from the APM website. You can find it there. Um, so what I'm going to do is, let's assume this is the home screen, and in the home screen I want to click on views, and let's say I want to scroll all the way down, find the text switcher element, click on it, and then come. and click on this next 3 times. I want to do a triple click here, and then I want to validate the text here is 3. So this is an end-to-end test that I took for a demo. So I'll try to cover as many as functionalities within the demo, but you can always refer to our documentation for even more details, right? Good. So this is the use case, and so to iterate again. So this I want to call it as home screen. So this is the home screen here, and here you can use the @ Android find by iOS 𝐀𝐦𝐿 find by that you conventionally use with the Appium. Okay. Um, so I have already written the locators just to save some time. So again, after clicking on the views, so let me call this as view screen, and in the view screen I want to scroll to the text fields. So if you notice, this is the view screen, and here I have used combined by, and then instead of the conventional uh, the page factories, right? So combined by dot android. So I'm going to run the test only for the android as so by dot xpath, and then I'm using like this, right? If you want to also include your iOS locators, you can also do like this, right? So for now, I'm not doing it. So after there, once you click on the text switcher, we have a couple of elements here. If you notice here, next button. So if you notice, this is what I'm using. I'm using Appium selectors by text next. So if you notice, I don't even have to open the Appium inspector to inspect it, right? So I can just find it using text, and so there is no noise at all. So I want to find the element by the text next. That's it. So it's pretty simple to write these locators. You don't have to even spend a lot of time. So I mean, you can also do a static import, so it becomes even more readable. Good. And then the number of clicks count. The click count is basically text view. I'm using index to basically find the element. Again, I'm also going to create a new selector strategy by class name and index. While creating the demo, I found out if you have some kind of selector like that, it will be useful. So I'll be creating the PR soon. So yeah. So that's the whole stuff. And let's go ahead and start creating the test. Right. So let me call this as triple click test, or whatever you want to call it. For now, I'm just calling it as triple click test. Right. So and then we'll have our begin with test, and let's call it as white uh, triple click. Right. Triple click. Whatever. So yeah. Now, so if you notice here in the home screen, we have used page factory, right? So in conventional cases, what you obviously have to do is you have to go to you have to create a constructor. So when somebody creates it, you need to call the page factory dot init elements, and then so you need to do Appium field whatever, and then you need to pass a lot of things. I do not know what even to pass because I stopped using this page factory and entirely use by locators, or even if I use page factory, I simply initialize them using a different way. So that is, there's a class called a screen object and screen. So what you can do is you simply pass home screen dot class. What it does is basically it gives you the home screen instance. Again, it will also initialize the page factory. This particular method takes care of all of that, so you don't have to really worry about it. So you don't even have to call page factory dot init elements. It will handle all of it by itself. So in a conventional Appium, during my early days, I have spent a lot of time understanding why when interacting with views it throwed null pointer exception. So these are all crazy days, but with Selenide Appium you can solve all of that. Let's go back to the test and start writing it. So home screen dot navigate to the Chrome screen. So let's go here and let's try to run interact with this element. So views, and then I can import it, and then it should be, so there are a lot of conditions here. So you can say visible, you can wait for it to become interactable, you can wait for the text to become something. So there are a lot of conditions that you can play around with. So it is all available inside condition class, right? So you can see bunch of conditions here. You can use any of that to interact, and you can also create your own condition. But again, for now, for simplicity reason, I'm going to use uh, uh, visibility. That's it. So I want to do a static import, make it more readable, and then I want to click on it. Once I do that, I want to return, just to make sure that I can write fluent code. You can either do create a new instance of the view screen like this, and then since we are not using any of the page factory, you can directly call new view screen. But in case if you are using any page factory here, then it is recommended to use the screen object or screen method and then pass view screen dot class. So it takes care of all this stuff for you, right? So we can again use that, right? Good. Now let's go back to the view screen, and here I want to interact with the element. So what I have to do is basically do a dollar, and then I can simply say text switcher. That's it. Once this is done, and I simply can scroll to the element and then perform a click operation on it. Again, I can do return screen, and then I can pass text switcher screen dot class. That's it. Right? So once you go there, you want to perform a triple click, right? So I need to create a custom condition here. This is not use case that we do every day, but still, let me go ahead and create a new class called as triple click, right? So in this triple clicks, basically you need to implement from command interface, and then the Selenide element is something that we're going to do, right? So there is a method execute that you want to implement. I don't want to do all of these, right? So you have three parameters to work with, right? The Selenide element itself, the driver object, and in the arguments if you're passing anything to it. But for simplicity reason, I'm not going to write the sequence class code. What I'm going to do is I'm going to click it three times all by myself, and then I'm going to return the Selenide element. So this is for page chaining. So since this element is returning Selenide element, so you can do the page chaining continuously, right? So this is a little trick that I'm using now, but in real world you have to write the code using the sequence class, right? And once you do that, you can go to the uh, text switcher screen, and then you say dollar. The next button is something that I want to click with. Then right, um, so should be visible, and then I can simply do a triple click. So triple click is not available now, so you need to call execute method and then pass new triple click. That's it. So this will perform the triple click, right? So, and what I want to do is I'll return this particular instance, so I can do the chaining, um, and then for assertions. So again, check whether the counter, whatever counter has value, and if somebody pass string, right, I'm going to assert with that, right? So I'm going to find the element again, the number of clicks, right? And then simply say should have. Again, you can use should be, but you can use should have, which have more readability here. Should have text, right? And then the text is whatever the value that they are passing. Right? That's it. So that's all. We have written all the code. Let's complete the test. So navigate to the home screen, navigate to the text switcher screen, perform the double click, and check whether the has the value of 3, right? So yeah, 3. So all looks good here. Just one thing, we just need to write the code to launch the APM session. So that's pretty important, right? So what you can do is you can separate that from the actual code. You can write it here, but actually there is a clean implementation that we have provided, that you can utilize, right? In a conventional framework, people write a lot of factory classes and provide the implementation there, but here you can simply write, so Android app provider, something like this. and then you can implement the web driver provider interface. Again, guys, so we are cleanly following the conversion. This is basically open close principle, so you can extend to add your own capabilities, right? So just to save some time, I will use the local Android template. So I'm just trying to launch the Android driver here, right? Uh, so all looks good. That's it. So now everything is set. Let's go to the double-click test class. We will create before each, and then we will add public setup. Let's tell Selenide Appium to use this particular implementation class to launch the Appium session. So for that, you need to just call configuration.browser, and then you can simply say the class name Android app provider dot class dot get name. That's it. Then you can say Selenide-Appium.launch app. So use this implementation and then launch the app and perform this particular test. That's as simple as that. So let's run it. And I have my Appium server up and running. This is the emulator that is also running, right? So if you notice, I hardly took 5 minutes to run the test. That also includes a custom command that I created here. Without that, uh, it is going to be very simple to write an Appium test, right? I didn't focus on how to scroll to an element, right? I didn't focus on how to wait for an element. So all these things are basically taken care by Selenide Appium, which is pretty cool. I know since this is a live demo, it took a little bit of extra time, and on a normal day it would run very fast, but just the compilation itself is taking a little bit of time here. So yeah, writing a test with Selenide Appium is basically pretty easy, and it's going to be pretty interesting as well. There is a lot of hidden features that you can explore and use them. So it's going to launch the app now. Yeah, it's good. Click on the views, and then it should scroll to the text whatever text switcher, right? And then it's gonna perform 3 clicks on the next. It will validate the text, right? So yeah, it does everything absolutely fine. Again, if you want to run your test on different cloud providers, for example, you want to run it on Lambda test. So since we are speaking at the Lambda test conference, let's run it there as well. Android app provider, whatever, and then it again implements the WebDriver provider interface. Yeah, let's implement the method. Let's remove all of this and let's say lambda text, right? So it's just to save some time. I created a snippet. I don't want to type all these things, right? All looks good. Let's import all these stuff. Right. Yeah, all looks good. And so I'm going to create a new UI automator instance, passing all the platform names, device where I want to run the test, Lambda test app URL, which app I want to run the test, and then the hub URL and everything. Right, all looks good. I just need to go there and then change this to uh, Lambda test, right? And then I have to run the test. Again, guys, don't worry about this. You don't have to touch it in the code. You can also pass this browser as a command line argument from your Maven. So you don't have to really write this code here. This is just for time being. And let's go to the Lambda test automation dashboard. So in the meantime, you can also see the test that previously ran. So yeah, it's gonna be pretty simple, right? So you can find all these logs here as well. So if you notice, the new test is now it's running, but again it's going to be the same, so you don't have to really worry about it. So you can also click here and then see the new test that's being run now. So yeah, that's all I have to showcase. Again, you can also pass this as a command line argument as well. You don't have to even write it here. Right? Good. So yeah, so I'm happy to take any questions. Uh,
Thank you, Mithun. Thank you so much for the lovely demo and giving us brief information about how the cylinder actually helps most of the QAs to make their test suite much more simpler.
yeah,
Yeah, and trust me, the scrolling part and the keyboard part is totally relatable to me. I have been done through so many things, and it's really hard for the standard APM thing. So yeah,
yeah,
that is really useful. Thank you so much. So yeah, we do have the another Q&A session. So I'm going to present some questions which our audience asked. So yeah, so how does the mutation of the Java APM client in the Selenide APM enhance the capabilities and performance of mobile test automation?
yeah. So for example, we use APM under the hood, so the performance doesn't really gets affected, right? So we only save the time to write the test, and we also help to write the readability of the test, and also we built a lot of beautiful wrappers where you could save your energy without understanding all the details. You can directly focus on the business logic. Even now here, the demo I showcased, I didn't really care about how the scroll is happening. What is the code behind it, right? All I cared about is just call the scroll to method and it just scrolled there, right? So that's the advantage that I'm speaking about. If even if I want to wait for an element or do some assertions, I didn't spend a lot of time there. I just call these methods and then everything happened under the hood. So basically, performance wise, we don't increase anything. But while you write the code and the code quality gets improved with Selenide API.
Yeah. So what impact does Selenide APM have on readability and structure of test scripts?
Yeah, actually, I've been using APM for a very long time. I have written a lot of code. I've been using APM like from before one version. Right? So so I have known how APM have evolved. APM Java client particularly have a lot of changes, right? If you tell someone like um, that I know APM, by the time next 2 months the code will be different. So the code gets evolved pretty often, and it's very hard for someone to remember how it works. And then you also need to have a testing. You need to have a code that works on all the devices. That is pretty complex because there is a lot of manufacturers. There is a lot of screen sizes, different operating systems. That's pretty hard to basically cater all of them. And particularly in our organization, we adopted Selenide APM. It has greatly improved the readability and the time it took to create the test. If you want to create, previously we used to create 1 or 2 scripts in a day, but after Selenide APM, we used to create 4 to 8 scripts. So it basically helped us to write faster and readable tests.
Yeah, and this one is one of my favorite now. So could you discuss a scenario where this combination facilitated cross-platform testing, saving time and effort?
Yes, so you can use Selenium APM for automating both of your Android and iOS. From my personal experience, I have used Selenium APM in my pet projects, and then also to my office projects. It has greatly saved our time in creating this test. So I wish you try it once, and then I'm sure you would be pretty impressed with the time that you can save by using Selenium APM.
Yep. Yep. So this is the last question which we have is, can you elaborate on some of the key mutations on enhancement that sets Selenide APM apart from the traditional APM client?
I think mutations is particularly something that I want to give it give it that kind of name. Actually, we didn't change anything in the APM itself. So what we did was we created beautiful wrappers, built them in such a way that it can be easily customized. Uh, uh, for example, the way how you can launch the app, right? So you just need to create a provider class, implement the WebDriver provider interface. Again, if you notice closely, I didn't close to my sessions myself, right? We handle that for you. Even if you want to run your test in parallel, you don't have to really use thread local or stuff like that. We handle a lot of that for you. So there are a lot of things like you want to. There are a lot of other beautiful wrappers available, which I cannot basically explain in an hour. But we built a lot of beautiful wrappers. We created this in a way that you could write fluent and concise code, right? So that's the thing that we have done in Selenide API. We just a wrapper, and at certain point of time, you think there is a particular capability that is not available in Selenide. You can obviously go back to Appium. So all you have to do is call Appium driver runner dot get driver. So then it will give you the driver instance of the Appium, and then you can call the same methods, whatever that is available in Appium. So at any point of time, you can switch to Appium, you can switch back to Selenide Appium, so you can move back and forth. So
Cool. That's a cool stuff. So yeah, thank you, Amuthan, for this amazing session. I hope everyone found this session as interesting and a great learning experience as I did. So yeah, audience, session recording will be available on YouTube channel, inviting you to revisit and share this enlightenment perspective. And yeah, thank you so much.
thank you, Pratik. Thank you for being a wonderful host. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Amuthan. Thank you.
Thank you.